Hello, I'm Sinta Ebersohn from Get Up and Grow. So for this video, we're going to talk about school readiness, and it's a topic that's very relevant at this time of the year because many parents are faced with having to make decisions about whether their children are ready to go to primary school or not. And there are various factors at play here. Hello, I'm Sinta Ebersohn of Get Up and Grow, and with me is Melissa van Hal. She's a specialist wellness counselor and also a support learning specialist. Melissa, thank you for chatting with me and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Please tell us a bit about what you do.
So I started off as a support learning specialist. So I've worked in education for many, many years, close on 2 decades. And I tend to work with learners that are finding the school system a bit challenging, or homeschoolers, or learners that want to learn study habits, study skills, or basic foundational skills. I also have now started doing more counseling, and I work a lot with educational wellness and emotional wellness in an educational setting. I have 2 businesses. The one is EduHelp, and my other business that is more counseling orientated is Holistic Awareness.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. With me here is Tendayi Marwa. She is a remedial teacher. Tendayi, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me and welcome. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you for having me. My name is Tendayi Marwa. I'm a remedial teacher at Imhoff Waldorf School in Komiki. So my job entails reading therapy, maths tutoring, but in a different way, where I support learners with different difficulties in maths. So I practice what I call on point teaching, where after giving a diagnostic, I'll just add on to what the learner knows, not like start from the beginning, because it always discourages the learners if you have to start everything from the beginning. So confidence building in maths, that's what I really want to call it. And and also I do what we call in the world of education extra lesson, neurological development for children who have developmental delays and other delays in learning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Confidence building in maths. I think most of us needed that when we were in school. Hey, me certainly.
Yes, that's true.
With me here is Tendayi Mhuriro, a foundation phase teacher and a mother. Tendayi, thank you so much for agreeing to chat to me and welcome here. Will you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, hello everyone, and hello Sinta. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Tendayi Mhuriro, and foundation phase teacher. Currently teach grade 2 in Cape Town, and I'm a mother to an energetic 9-year-old boy.
I'm using the term school readiness, but I also want to make a point of mentioning that we're talking about skills that are required in a school environment, but many of these things are also applicable to homeschoolers because there's still a kind of a formal setting or a time period where they have to sit and focus and concentrate and actually do the learning. Apart from, we know how children learn when they play and apply things themselves and all of that.
I really do agree. I also think that these skills that children are learning in a school setting are applicable to when they finish school as well. So in a homeschool setting, there is a lot more flexibility, but it's still important for children to be aware of time. So using timers when doing tasks. It also helps you establish things like processing and the child's processing speed. And that ability to follow sequenced instructions is as applicable in the homeschool setting because that is how we engage in conversation. And it's an attention and a focus skill that we use in conversation. So even though in the classroom setting, it tends to be in a bigger group setting, these skills are as applicable in a homeschool setting. And I think that a lot of the homeschool parents that I have worked with actually appreciate us applying these skills in the homeschool environment either they will eventually put the kids into mainstream, or they want to go on to do tertiary education. And to be able to have these skills allows them so much more in terms of the homeschooling benefit, in terms of that one-on-one, but also gaining the benefits of skills that you would learn in a group setting.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. That's very valuable. Tendai, let's start at the basics. Gross motor skills. That involves the larger muscle groups, and they are essential for physical activities like running and jumping and participating in physical education classes. A child lacking these skills may face difficulties in sports and other physical activities, which can affect their overall well-being and confidence. Please tell us more about that.
So, yeah, gross motor skills, they're very important when a child is starting to learn, but they develop much more, like from birth, we're all developing all those gross motor skills, like, when your child starts rolling, that's a gross motor skill. And when your child sits up and then start crawling. So it's a progression of skills, of gross motor skills, where we use our whole body, our core system, and our, usually wide movements. Yes. Just to propel yourself forward. And then we move from that toddler phase into, like kindergarten, where we have to, use the jungle gym. Those are wide movements. And we also need those to throw and kick, skip, like you said. So these gross motor skills are what prepares us for learning, are what prepares also for us to condition our bodies, preparing to learn, because you see, as we further go into with the skills, we'll see how important they are to be mature or to be at a level where they can sustain you to learn, because usually the body is sort of like a container where everything else has to fall in. So it has to be in a good condition. You have to be able to, so gross motor skills, they work with balance. They also give us balance. They also, perfect our movement skills, our general movement skills. And you'll be surprised when sometimes when you say, putting on a trousers is gross motor skill. Putting on a shirt is gross motor skill. Taking a fork and, the movement, they're all gross motor skills. So they become a part of our everyday life. So they need to be in a condition where, sometimes when you don't feel the strain of doing those activities, it means your gross motor skills are mature. So a child is encouraged, or we're expecting a child to enter class 1 with those skills in place.
And how would those skills apply to the schoolroom environment? Are we talking about the muscles that must be strong enough for a child to sit straight up, to not slouch and lean on the table, for example?
So sitting, the gross motor skill also, when you've got mature, your gross motor is mature. When you sit, you can sit with endurance. You can endure the long time of sitting, and you can also sit and do other things. So it's really important that when a child sits, they can sit for, a reasonable time, and then they don't feel the pain, or they don't feel fatigued from sitting, and they don't start slouching. So when you are able to sit and pay attention, it means that more of intake, you have more of the intake of the content that you're supposed to be getting, rather than fight your body to sit straight or fight your body to concentrate. So it brings a lot of things into the classroom. And it also brings, you're able to do social activities in the playground with your friends. You're not standing there and watching because you cannot do those things. You also, you not being competitive, but you can participate in all the activities that are there. So gross motor skills are responsible for a lot of things. Social life, because you can move with others, you can sit with others, you can also take part because your body is well postured, well posed, and you're well balanced. You can, walk and jump and do all the other things. So we really we really need that, because you'll see that later it will facilitate the finer skills. But for the finer skills to come about, the gross motor skills have to be in place.
Yes. So as you mentioned, the playing, for example, I'm thinking of playing hopscotch, for example, or touches, the things that we played as children. So it's the ability to measure the sizes of your steps, or maybe jump, or skipping rope. What is it that you call it? Those sort of things.
Yeah, skipping.
So those are all the gross motor skills that we need, and that helps us to participate in the games and the social activities, apart from the demands that are made on our body to learn academically.
Yes, that's true. So that is the thing. We need the balance that the gross motor skills bring. We need the posture that the gross motor skill bring. So if you take hopscotch, like you say, you have to hop, you have to stop,
yes,
well balanced, and then you have to plan again to hop. So motor planning, gross motor skills, everything has to be in place. So for you to do that activity that is multifaceted, you need also your wide arm movements so that you balance. You need your core to be straight, so the posture and the balance, they all come together. So, and the locomotion. So gross motor skills makes us really sometimes who we are and what we're able to do, in relation to social skills, in relation to the social life of the class, and also to be part of the things, like I said, those are gross motor skills. And when it's time to it's time to take off your clothes, you can take off their clothes because they are wide movements. So you can take off your jeans in class without assistance. You can, do other things, carry heavy things, because your core is stable enough to lift things. And also to, when you stretch and pull, you don't feel the pain of the muscles, or you don't feel fatigued.
Yeah, you were mentioning carrying, and I'm thinking of the sizes and the weight of the poor children's school bags these days. The books are so heavy, so they need to be strong enough to get around with everything they need to carry with them, and to be independent as far as that's concerned.
Exactly.
So you mentioned fine motor skills, and that actually requires dexterity that can really hinder academic performance and confidence. So these crucial tasks are used for writing and cutting and using tools. It's precise hand and finger movements. What can you teach us about that?
So when we talk of fine motor skills, we're looking at, now we're moving from the gross motor ability of the body into refined movements. Right. So, like, for example, like I said, when you're eating, carrying the fork and dipping into your food, it's gross motor. But holding of the fork and then the precise movement of lifting up the food and putting into your mouth requires this part of your hand. That's refined movement of the small muscles. So we've moved from the bigger muscles, and then we're using those bigger muscles now to carry out refined work.
Yes.
So we mostly fine motor skills, we use them for writing, for drawing, for painting, for sewing and knitting, and also, threading of buttons and beads and all that small stuff that you need to pick up with your hands. So you like you said, you need dexterity in your hands to do that. And other things, something else that, people are not really familiar with is your visual spatial awareness is also a fine motor skill, because you have to be able to track things. You have to be able to track when you're reading. Sometimes children get tired when they're writing. then they lift their head, and then they go like this. Then they lift their head. So the amount of time or the frequency of lifting your head up and down, sometimes it makes them dizzy or tired. So let's say you're writing the word Monday, and the word Monday is on the board. Sometimes it will be, because your eyes are weak, just to track the word Monday and then capture that, it's quite difficult. So the child will lift their head, then write the M's, maybe half the M. Then again, dip their head and finish that. So by the time they finish writing the word Monday, they would have dipped their head, 20 times. And you can imagine the bobbing of the head like this. And then also trying to focus and concentrate. So that's where, it's also a fine motor skill, your eyes, because there are small muscles as well that we need to look into. So fine motor skills, we really use that in. So now, for example, again, dressing, like I said, putting on your pants, it's a gross motor skill, but buttoning it up and zipping it up or buttoning it up, that's a fine motor skill. Putting on your shoes, gross motor. Tying your shoelaces, fine motor skills. So they're kind of like, integrated in their function. So we have to have gross motor skills before we even talk of the fine motor skills. Yeah.
Well, you've given some great examples to make it clear how the gross motor skills actually support the fine motor skills. The one can't go without the other. So I can see that somebody who doesn't have the gross motor skills will also then battle to develop the fine motor skills. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you give us a few examples of how parents can help their children to develop the fine motor skills? We've talked about games and activities and things for the gross motor skills, but how can we as parents at home help our children to develop the fine motor skills if we are already playing outside enough and running around and jumping and climbing trees and swinging around?
Okay, so fine motor skills, sometimes we do that inside the house or inside the home. Okay, like if you can ask your child, can you please help me thread the beads? You can thread the beads. That's a fine motor skills, because you have to use the end tips of your fingers. And also Play-Doh, it strengthens your muscles, your finger muscles. And we also do finger exercises, like when you just go like this.
Like that.
Oh, right. Or you can just go like this, pushing the fingers just to strengthen them.
Yeah.
And then and then we've got different rhymes, like twinkle twinkle little star and all that. So we have activity, even laundry. When you ask your child, can you wash the dishcloth, or can you wash your socks, or can you bath the dog? So different kind of activities that are found in the house or around the house, or in the home or around the house. Yeah, they're very good. Even like weeding. If you have a little garden, you can do your weeding there. It's also fine motor skills. A lot of other things but usually some of these fine motor skills come bundled together with the gross motor skills, you see. So you win both, because when you exercise the body, then it's extended from the gross motor into the fine motor skills. So some of these exercises or the things that we do in the house will just come together.
Great examples, thank you. So let's start with communication skills, which we know is very important. And that includes speaking, listening, and understanding, and those things that are fundamental for participating in classroom discussions, to follow instructions, and also to express thoughts. How do we determine whether a child has the enough or the correct language and communication skills so that they can comprehend the lessons, communicate with their peers and their teachers, and basically get around and engage in group activities? Please tell us more about that.
Okay. All right. So strong communication skills are very important for a child to be considered ready for school and to be able to function in a meaningful way, in a rewarding way in the school environment, because I'll take you into the classroom. So the teacher has a full class that's maybe 25 children. In South Africa, that's mostly the number, the median number. And the teacher gives instructions to the whole class. And your child needs to be able to listen and understand that instruction and execute what's expected. Of course, the foundation phase teacher knows that repetition is key, but they are expected to understand at least on the second attempt of the teacher repeating the question, the instruction. And also, communication goes for their social cohesion with their peers as well. If they cannot communicate their needs, you find that they feel isolated because they're not engaging with their peers. And with children, they soon figure out who speaks to me and who does not speak to me. And they sort of form meaningful relationships with those kids that are outspoken and communicate openly and fluently. So when we speak of communication skills, we are speaking of the actual act of talking, speaking, and the understanding, the processing of instructions, and what's expected in an environment, and acting appropriately for that matter. Also, a child should be able to explain to their teacher their needs, because they're young children, they have different needs at different times. I'll take, for example, going to the bathroom. It's not like at home when they want to go to the bathroom, they just go because they know where the bathroom is. At school, it's a different way of doing things. They have to put their hand up and say, may I please go to the bathroom? So the teacher knows that the child is in the bathroom and they're given the permission to do that. So in the early years, if a child cannot communicate, it becomes problematic for them because they will feel left out. They will feel that they are not being noticed. And you find that there may be incidences, especially with the bathroom routine, if they cannot communicate.
What about them communicating with each other? How do children get along who can't, you know, if they are of the same age and they can't communicate with each other?
So communication with each other is a greater part of learning as well and development, and it's needed. So a child should be able to form friendships, and for a friendship to flourish, there has to be communication. What I've noticed as a foundation phase teacher is that when they come in at the beginning of the year in the first term, a child sort of finds their own group, their own tribe, I like to call it. You find that the jovial, outspoken, cheerful child will also go with the cheerful children. And the quiet, reserved kid will also find a quiet, reserved friend. So if a child cannot speak clearly, they cannot form those relationships. You find that such children sort of hang out by themselves, or they play alongside other children without really engaging with their peers, or they sort of hang around the teacher. And most of the time they appear as needy, but you find that it's because they feel comfortable around an adult because we tend to know what they want, but they do not engage with the other children. And that further exacerbates the communication problem because it's not growing, it's not developing. I also find that to be problematic in households where there's an only child, where the child is the only child and the child grows up around adults. Adults have a way of talking, and most of the time we exclude children. If I take, for example, myself and my husband, we have our own conversations, but if you don't take notice of it, it's easier to overlook the young person in the house. So, and we sort of speak for them and do things for them without even being asked, without giving them the opportunity to communicate clearly, because we know them, they are our children. So that's one thing that parents should look out for, to allow their children to communicate clearly, to say exactly what they want to say, be it they are upset or they are happy. Give them the opportunity to clearly articulate what they want to say.
Yes, thank you for that. So when we talk about literacy, such as the ability to recognize and understand letters, phonics, and basic sight words, it's those things that are all vital for early reading readiness. Please tell us what that means and how that affects a child's ability to learn.
So when you talk of literacy, there are so many facets that brings in readiness for you to be able to be literate, or for you to have literacy awareness. Yeah, yeah. Like I say, there are so many facets. We have the ability to listen and to speak. It all falls into literacy. And then we have the ability to hold a book properly, and directionality of the reading or the writing, whatever you're doing with that book. And then we have the ability to listen to a story and then retell the story or comprehend the story. Then we come to the section that most people, look at, the letter and word recognition when we go to that. And then we have writing. So all those things make up. They've got their own sub facets as well, but bring those together will make it easy for your child to be able to be competent in literacy. Right. So the child should be able to, listen, sit properly, like, supported by those gross motor skills that we were talking about before, paying attention, not feeling, exhaustion in your body, be able to listen. And also be able to listen. When we say be able to listen to the tone of the voice. Is it a statement? Is it a command? Is it a question? Is it this? And also retain that when they talk to you, or when they talk to somebody, or put the tone that directs the person to what it is that you want to be done. So that's one part of literacy that is very important, so that a child will understand that, oh, this is a question, or this is a statement, or this is telling me to stop what I'm doing, or this is that, just to differentiate the tone and the note of the voice.
Yes.
Right. And then give that back when they talk to somebody as well. And then we have book handling, just to know that this is how you position the book. You open the book from here going this way, and then everything in the book, we start from the left. Even when we're writing or when we're reading, we start from the left going to the right, and then back again to the left. And also that whatever is written in a book, the print that is written in a book, or the pictures that are written in a book, they're trying to tell me something. Their content, their information that I need to put in my head, store it, or process, something like that. And so, and like I say, directionality, that even if you're writing a short sentence, you just write it and stop there, then start again from the left. So left to right orientation is very important when we're talking of literacy. And then story sense and comprehension is, can they listen to a story and recall the story, or listen to a story and then retrieve the when or who was in the story? Who are we talking about? What did they do? Who did they talk to? Were they nice people? Being able to bring your own feeling into the story. Being comprehend whatever is being said, but also be able to say how you feel about the story. It develops also your emotions that, sometimes, a child will say, oh, that's so unfair. So already they're processing it into their own emotion in the understanding of the environment that they have. So it's very important when you do this story time with your child, give them the time and the room to, give their own input. Or, sometimes they say, well, it doesn't make sense. Why didn't they do this and do this and do this? Now they're processing it according to how they feel and how they think. So it's very important to have your own opinion of the story, a child to have their own opinion of the story, and also be able to comprehend what the story was trying to tell, and also give a feedback of the recall of the story with the characters, the place, and all that. Although in class 1 it's not so much developed, but you've got an idea when a child is telling you a story that it's coming from there, following all that. The chronology is there.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And then now we come to the letters and the words. So the first thing that we're looking at is the idea, recognizing the identifying the letters, that these are letters. This is not maths, these are letters. And then from there, now we move into naming. Well, in the school system that I am in, we start by naming the uppercase letters. Just naming, this is A, this is B, this is C, and also now we name and we sound. So recognizing that this is M, it's the sound is M, because now the M is for reading, but then the letter has got a name. But then the sound will assist us in letter reading. So that is, and then now we can, after that, we can it's with automaticity that we can say this is M, this is D. So being able to identify the letters when they're not in the alphabet, within their normal alphabet, just picking randomly and then naming, that will predict the good reading skills. And then later, sometimes children come in different stages. Some will know how to read, some won't know how to read. So now blending or joining of the words that we have already. So if you take cat, K-A-T, C-A-T, then okay, let's sound it. K-A-T. So when how does it resonate in your head? Just listen to, is there something familiar that you have heard before? Or, we're trying to bring this letter, the sound into the letter. The sound, the child already has, that's why some of the children get stuck on sub-vocalizing, because they're finding it difficult to blend the sounds, the CVC sounds. They'll keep on saying, and then you say, no, listen to all the sounds that are in there. So in the beginning, it's very important to work with your CVC words so that the child has time to absorb the sounds. So we do that when they've got difficulty, we do that for a long time until the sounds just kind of like become more and more familiar, then it becomes so easy. And then we keep on building on the structures. Then we move on the CVC, and then, usually you would want to do the CVC, the phonic style. And then now you have the sight words where you just have to learn by heart. So, if you've got difficulty in the beginning, we do the phonics on their own, and then we do the sight words on their own. And then the next step is to just small phrases like, this is a cup. So you've got your phonics, you've got your sight words. So, or you can go a bag and ant. So just small phrases, not long sentences. So we move from the letters of the alphabet, then they become words. Even if they are 3-letter words, then they become phrases, because now we are mixing the phonic words and the sight words together. So we move from the letter, then the word, then the phrase, then eventually go to a sentence, depending on the, the progress of the child. So these things need to be, sensitized before, depending on the education system, before you come into the classroom. Then we move on to, and also thereby the letters and the words, it's very good to read to your child. It also, brings in the sounds, reading and pointing while you're reading and, pointing. And then once in a while, when you find an easy word, you say, okay, just read this for me. And then they'll read that. Then they also become, familiar with reading. And then now move to another aspect of writing where I say sometimes when I have parents, call over parents for a meeting and say, one of the most important things in learning is writing. That's where I get all the feedback that I need from a child. All of the feedback is there because you can see the handwriting skill, letter formation, you can see spatial awareness, you can also see if a child, does that bobbing of the head, you can see the inconsistency of the spaces in between. So encouraging your child to write frequently will give you also a picture of how they're doing. So you can tell them, oh, sit down. Can you write this for me? Then you can also see their posture, their struggles. Do they get fatigued very quickly? And the presentation of work, is it, are they forming their letters correctly? Are they working to their grade? So that's with writing. And also their endurance, does it meet the grade? Because sometimes you've got a child in class who now will be in class 4, but they're still writing like a class 1, which means in class 1 we do not address the muscles that we need to support that. So all that needs to be checked. Are we doing things according to the age, and are we doing according to the grade? Are we building endurance? Are we building sustenance and stamina to learn? So the efficiency becomes much more as the muscles and everything gets efficient, then learning becomes easier. And then it becomes, and then hopefully when we put that together in other things, literacy becomes possible.
Well, as you said, there's a whole lot happening about a child's development in terms of literacy before we even get to the letters and the writing and the reading of it.
Yes.
There's a whole, foundation that needs to be in place before children can actually start making meaning of the alphabet.
Yes.
So to speak. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yes. What about numeracy? Is that similar to literacy or is it different?
It's not different per se. It's, it's also integrated because some of the things that you find in numeracy, you find them in literacy. And some of the things run parallel, like numbers. You need to recognize and identify numbers and their symbol and their quantity, the same as needing to recognize the name of the letter and the sound of the letter. So in numeracy, we have other things that we need to do, understanding the difference of things, difference in colors, difference in sizes, difference, just for a child to recognize that so and so is taller than me. They have that concept. This stone is heavier than this one. There's that concept of weight. And then, okay, my stick is longer than so and so. We need to bring in those things, and also to recognize that there are shapes that makes other things. We have shapes, yes, but also shapes are responsible of bringing life into other things that we see in the house or in the environment. So that thing of, like I say to my parents, that there's a difference between numeracy and mathematics. Numeracy is everyday things that we see every day. You can also be doing maths, but you're still practicing numeracy, because when you count money, that's numeracy. When you compare colors, that's numeracy. When you cut up pizza, you're practicing numeracy. And then when you count. So numeracy is something that brings life into life, that makes everyday life become life, because you have decisions to make, decisions to, you have got decision to make. Is this big? Is this small? Is this heavy? Is this? So we need to bring that in. And also the number concept, bring that in, the physical part and all the other, things that are not maths, that are not adding, subtracting, or this. So we need to bring that in. And then we'll move into the, the 4 processes, the addition, subtraction, and do that. But if you have the concept of sequencing, I always say to the children, like, you find maths everywhere. When you open the book and it says page 4, you're already doing maths. If I say read 4 pages, for what 4 stands for. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know that. If I say I want you to walk 10 steps, you can count the 10 steps. Or if I say, this ball weighs 10 kilos, you tell me, it's not 10 kilo because it's smaller and it's not that heavy. So that, the whole concept of comparing things, understanding how things work, that brings into numeracy. Understanding money, everybody understands money. Understanding money is measurement, temperature. Is it cold? Is it hot? Did it rain so much yesterday than today, or did today rain so much than yesterday? All those things come into our numeracy brain, that supports our brain before we start adding and subtracting and all that. And then, I kind of find the world of way fascinating, because, in the first year of learning, we just don't go like, boom, this is plus, they have the whole verse of this is, Mr. Plus, Mr. Minus. They do this in an interactive way, to, just explaining things into finer concepts. So that is maths for you. And also puzzles. You're able to solve a puzzle. That's also part of your maths brain, your maths skill.
Amazing. We've been talking about puzzles with other participants in this video as well. The importance and the value of building puzzles. I love puzzles, and I think it's something that everybody should do from a very young age.
That's true.
Yes. Let's start with attention and concentration. And I'm just reading off my list here. Along with the ability to focus and sustain attention, concentration is critical for classroom learning. A child who struggles with attention and concentration maybe have difficulty following instructions, completing assignments, and staying engaged in lessons. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think one of the most important things that we as parents and teachers and everyone else involved in this field need to realize is that the child's concentration is actually the equivalent of their age. So if you're working with a 5-year-old, you've got 5 minutes of solid concentration that you're actually working with before they lose that engagement. And a classroom setting, they're often expected to sit still for 20 to 40 minutes. So this is quite a challenge for every child. It's also very important to remember that concentration isn't necessarily just sitting still or remaining focused as in looking at the board. It also is the ability to be engaged in a task. So be able to follow through on conversations and be able to start a task and finish a task. So there are many other different elements that one needs to be aware of when we're looking at concentration and attention. It's also important to remember that the children actually focus, like us adults, differently. And some children, when concentrating, actually require movement. And unfortunately, in a classroom setting, there isn't a huge amount of movement that's allowed. But one of the things that they have now started introducing more, and I'm a huge fan of, is actually a wobble cushion. I have one.
Mhm.
This is a wobble cushion.
Mhm.
And it goes on the seat, and it's amazing because it doesn't distract other learners, and it also allows the children to have that bit of movement, and it
Okay.
works on their core and their stability. So it's a
Wonderful.
fantastic asset. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about how to build concentration. And one of my favorite things is actually puzzles. I brought all puzzles with me. The reason I'm actually showing the puzzles is people seem to think that the longer or it takes to build a puzzle, or the bigger a puzzle, the better the concentration is. And in fact, your puzzle isn't determined by size. It's actually determined by difficulty in terms of colors and textures. So this is a slightly easier puzzle. There are many more colors. So there's less attention required to build this puzzle. Whereas this puzzle you will see is mostly white, it's actually a lot more difficult and involves a lot more attention skills to build it. But they're both 24 pieces. So it's such a nice way to build a child's concentration. You can start really small with a 12 to 24 piece puzzle. And as they get stronger, you can then get more difficult puzzles, and it allows them to grow their attention naturally. It is such a fantastic tool. I actually use puzzles for many, many different things. But for a parent wanting to build that concentration in an engaging and different way, and also engage in other skills like fine motor or problem solving, puzzles are incredible, absolutely amazing, and definitely we should have houses full of them.
I have 12 puzzles. I absolutely love building puzzles.
No, it's amazing, and there are just so many benefits. And I actually recommend that children should be building a puzzle a day, kind of like the idea that we should read every day. We should actually be engaging in building puzzles every day. There are actually huge neurological benefits to it, one of them being the ability to concentrate and focus.
What a great suggestion. I love that.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to talk about is we're obviously looking at time periods with concentration. And we often don't realize, but children don't have a concept of time at all. And one of the things that I love to use in daily activities to help them be more aware is a timer. But to be aware when you're using a timer that not all children like sound. So sometimes you get silent timers. And also children learn differently. So I use these visual timers, so it will ring, and it actually shows you the time period. Okay. So the kids can actually, I'm just going to let it ring, sorry. It's also silent. So for your children that are sensory sensitive, it's fantastic, and it creates time awareness, which is actually an attention and focus skill required in the classroom. And it's so nice to have at home, because I know in the mornings parents get super stressed. We need to get the teeth brushed, the face washed, the food eaten, and having that visual timer, and the time decreases, the children can actually see it. And that also builds attention and focus and concentration. And I heard you mentioned earlier about the sequenced instructions. Such an important skill. That is one of the aspects that I don't think we realize how important it is. And we have this very unrealistic expectation that a child's going to go into school and they're going to be able to follow 3 to 5 instructions. And most children are not prepared for that. So one of the things parents can do at home that's incredibly helpful is to develop that following of instructions. I like to use simple instructions like things that they do in their daily activities. We're going to brush our teeth, wash our face, and then brush our hair. And then to see if the child can follow that order. Usually I start with one instruction when they're following through. And again, that's also task initiation and task completion. And when they're comfortable with 1, we move to 2, and then we move to 3. You're also observing, can they do it in order? Because remember, in the classroom, they will be getting instructions that they have to follow in order. So it's not just remembering the 3 instructions, but to include it into their life and into their daily skills is incredibly helpful and a great way to prepare them to be ready for school.
Great. Thank you so much for all that information. That is very helpful.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm very passionate.
I can see that. It's wonderful. Self-regulation and emotional control help children manage their feelings and cope with stress and frustration. So children who lack emotional control may experience anxiety, tantrums, or they might exhibit disruptive behavior. And that can disrupt the learning environment and hinder their social development. Please tell us more about that from your experience.
I think one of the important things to draw attention here is that sometimes if a child is showing that dysregulation at school, it's more noticeable. But we actually have a group of children that do not appear to have these signs in the school environment. And when they get home, they have a complete meltdown or tantrum because they are releasing that frustration. So what they've actually done at school is they've boxed everything in, and when they get home, that being overwhelmed, that anxiety and that frustration comes out. And I've had parents come to me and go, I don't understand. The teacher says my child's beautifully behaved in the classroom, but they come home and I feel like the coins just flipped and I'm seeing another side of my child. And the reality is that those children have actually contained themselves for that school period, and that when they're coming home, they then have that release of that emotional dysregulation that they've actually experienced. And it's important to acknowledge this, because what it actually means is that they're not processing their emotions, that they're not self-regulating. They're in fact containing themselves instead of actually processing. And then when they get home, the process happens, but it's in a huge explosion of emotions, which is even more difficult to process. So I think it's very important to distinguish that, because very often, you know, the teacher doesn't see it at home and the parent isn't seeing the well-behaved child at school, and it's actually a sign that the child is overwhelmed. So it's a very important factor to consider. And it does show that we need to be aware of that, looking at the differences of children in a school environment and in a home environment. And it's also positive in a way, because what it does mean is that the home environment is a safe space where they feel they can let all the emotions out. But we actually want to help the child learn to deal with the emotions throughout the day, so that they have that self-regulation and that processing of emotions throughout the day, which is critical to their development, because otherwise what they're actually doing is they're keeping it all inside. So that is something that I really wanted to draw attention to. I've actually brought some other things for this as well. The first thing that's so important, and that's one of the things we work very hard on, is helping children identify emotions. Very often they're having an experience, but they're not sure what that emotion is. And what I love to do is help them identify that emotion, and then help them realize how we know it's that emotion. Maybe my tummy's feeling very tight, so I've got anxiety. Or maybe I feel my fists coming together, so that's a sign of frustration and anger. So it's that connection for them, because sometimes they're feeling something, but there isn't that word identity with it. And this is so important for communication as well, because it helps them work with their peers and understand their peers. So I use quite a few tools. My one favorite tool that I actually use is little flashcards. And we have, I'm just going to show you here. And it's a great exercise I do. We've got bored. And what I love to do with the children is I say, okay, so what does bored mean? What kind of experiences do you have when you're bored? You know, oh, I'm bored when I feel like somebody's talking about the same thing too much. When I'm bored, I get a bit tired. So it begins to relate that emotion to experiences. And we also teach them to reflect. So I use mirrors quite a bit. Sorry, seeing all my toys in the background there. And I get them to actually mirror the emotions. And it's such a useful tool because they get to see it on their face. Yes. So that also helps connect with peers. It's such an amazing thing to use. We also need to teach them how to regulate. And sometimes it's very frustrating to say to a child, breathe. So what I do is I actually have a few of these. They're little bubble things, and we dip it in the bubbles, and we do a deep breath in, and then we breathe out all the feelings, and they come out in the bubbles, and we're releasing them. Okay. So it's a little way that's very visual for children. It's a great activity because the bubbles immediately de-stress them. And it's so much fun, and it's a great activity to do with your child at home. In the classroom, what I like to teach them, and it's quite a popular method, and I've seen quite a lot of people use it, is the hand method. And I tell them to imagine their fingers are different colors. So I'm breathing in the yellow, I'm breathing out the yellow, I'm breathing in the blue, I'm breathing out the blue. And to do it nice and slowly, and to visualize the color and breathe it out. And I use that when they're feeling very stressed out or anxious in the classroom. The other thing is they can do that once they're used to it without somebody doing it with them, and in a way that doesn't disrupt the classroom. So it's so important to realize that the techniques we teach them, they need to be able to apply themselves, and be in a way that the technique isn't disrupting the entire class. So it's very important. We also have these, it's tactile, so it's got the silky side and it's got the fluffy side. It's a weighted lap blanket. It was made for me by somebody very close, so I've got a few of them. And they are amazing self-regulation tools. So the children can either put it on their shoulders, and it gives them that deep pressure through the shoulders, or they can put it on the lap. So there are lots of tools that we use in the counseling and the educational space that allow children to develop these skills. But I think the starting point for me working with any child in terms of school readiness is the ability to identify that emotion. Because when I'm experiencing, I need to be able to say what I'm experiencing. And that's why it's so important. And to be able to describe what I feel when I have that experience, and to also explain situations where I may have that feeling. So to understand that you can be angry, and that feeling is completely valid if you've been building a beautiful tower and someone comes and knocks your tower over. You know, and then to be able to identify, oh, I can feel I'm angry, and I'm squeezing my fist because I'm really angry. But for them to be able to identify that so that they can go to the teacher and say, I'm really angry because my blocks were knocked over. It enables them to communicate what they're feeling and experiencing. And in school readiness, and also in the homeschool environment, because this is a life skill, that recognition of that experience, that recognition of that emotion, allows us to think about how we want to react and how we want to behave. And that's so important. Homeschooling, in the school environment, even as adults, we need to be able to identify so that we can actually react in a way that's appropriate to that experience.
Thank you for that. And I can see how important it is to expand vocabulary, because we need to teach the children the names of the different emotions and the feelings. So working on the vocabulary is quite important.
Yes, definitely. And that's also why with the Litlies, I use the flashcards, because we start with more and then we build up to bigger vocab. I know there's beautiful vocabulary wheels with the emotions.
Yes.
But for the Litlies, I love the flashcards because it's got the actual facial expression, it's got the word, and you can start with your basics. And as you were saying, expanding on it. So the flashcards are amazing, and you can build from there. Definitely agree.
I remember when my kids were small, I had a face like a clock with a dial in, and different faces expressing different emotions. And we all of us had one in the house. So when we woke up in the morning, they could turn the arm, the dial, and put it onto whatever it was that they were feeling. And we used that for quite some time. And my kids are grown up now, and they still refer to those emotion wheels that we had in the kitchen, where we would start with them every day. Very effective tool.
It is very effective. What a lovely idea. I love that. I think I'm going to go look for one of those.
I've got them. I was just thinking, as Melissa is also introducing all these interesting tools, we can maybe put some links with this video of where one can get these items. So look for them around the video. You'll find the information there. So if we've looked at the communication skills, what comes after that? are the social skills. And I have some notes here that I want to just read. Social skills enable positive social interactions like sharing, taking turns, and resolving conflicts, which are crucial for building relationships with peers and with the teachers. So a child who lacks these social skills may find it challenging to make friends, as you've mentioned already. They might find it challenging to collaborate in group activities and to adapt to the social dynamics of the classroom. What can you tell us about the social skills that children need to be able to adjust and thrive in a classroom environment?
Okay, so for a child to thrive in a formal schooling environment at the big school, the social skills that they need is the ability to take turns, waiting for a chance, to understand that they cannot be the center of attention at all times, to be able to share the teacher's attention with each other, with the other peers in the class. They also need to have the emotional maturity for that. So you will find that we have certain children who are able to understand when we say no. They are able to understand that there's a time for everything and things do not always go their way. That's also part of social development. And understanding, I would like to take a scenario of a friendship of two children or a group of children trying to play a game. There has to be a leader who is going to say out the rules and sort of oversee the whole game. Mm-hmm. There has to be those that are participating. And if a child is not socially developed to understand the dynamics of playing that way, you find that they'll always be in conflict with their peers. They'll always be not happy. They'll always have a complaint over a certain play area or a certain game. So it's also about give and take, to understand the relationship of give and take, and that things do not always go their way, or they're always not in charge of things. That's what I find. I've also noted here that they need to have the ability to resolve conflicts. Yes, the teacher is there to manage and make sure that a child is happy and safe, but it's also a life skill that's important for a child to be able to resolve conflicts amongst themselves. Little things like, can I play with this doll? And the other child says, no, but I got it first. So they need to understand that she got it first, so I have to wait for my turn. Sometimes it is an issue where children do not understand that it's sort of part of life for them, but it needs to be weaned off as they come into big school, or as they come to grade 1. They need to adjust, because in class we have classroom apparatus like the abacus, the number charts. We have things, the book corner, where they have to share things. So if a child is not socially developed to understand interaction between themselves and the peers or the teacher, then that becomes a problem. But what parents can do is also to stand their ground when it comes to things that they feel they shouldn't allow the children, because it's easier to give in to your children for the sake of peace,
Yes.
of the sake of just carrying on, choosing my battles. But when your child is getting ready for big school, it's very important to let them know that yes, they are important. Yes, they are seen, they are ahead, but also to consider the feelings of others. Yeah.
I'd like to just take a detour back to children who grow up without siblings. You mentioned that earlier. And I imagine the social skills also present some challenges with children who grow up around adults, as you explained. What can parents of single children do to help them to develop those social skills with their peers if there aren't siblings in the household?
Okay, so I believe in lots of social gatherings. I believe that you need to expose your child to other families. That's why it's important, if your child is an only child, organize play dates, take them out to different people, expose them to diversity, not only in terms of color, in terms of skin color or anything like that, but expose them to diversity in terms of morals, religion, and all those things.
Yes.
Because at school, they are going to meet people from different places, different backgrounds. So then they need to understand how other people conduct themselves and how they should respond to that. So it's not only about them, but also about understanding other people's behavior. That's part of social development. Understanding that when someone is now being rude to me, how do I handle that? Do I also go back and get rude with them, or do I fight them back? So parents of children that are just one child, they need to do more socialization, more exposure of their children to other children. I know it's easy these days that your child can just stay indoors, more lots and lots of toys and lots of screen time, but exposure to other children is more important. Go down to the park, if that regular child that you see every day, get them to ask their name and, form a sort of a relationship in the neighborhood or wherever you feel comfortable hanging out with your child.
Yes. And I believe it's important that we raise our children to be aware of diversity and the concept of inclusivity. And with that also comes emotional intelligence as they grow up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when they come to school as well, there's also a need to include other kids. So as children, they do not, but it's also our job to let them in their curiosity, in asking, why is this person like this, or why is the other child like this? We need to educate them why they are the way they are, and how we should accept them, and how they're just the same as us, and how they're supposed to be treated with respect. And also, adults in the household need to watch their language in terms of how they socialize, because kids, monkey see, monkey do. So the adult conduct in the household as well may determine how a child turns out at school in terms of socialization. I can tell you a child that comes from a house that is violent. I can tell you a child that comes from a home that is loving and warm and accepting. And I can tell you a child that comes from a home where the child rules the roost.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting and very important aspect that you mentioned there.
Yes. I also just want to add that parents need to know that more of a child's development in all aspects, emotional, social, and all that, it starts from the home. Because I like that you mentioned that we are doing this to equip parents who have children that are going into the big school. But this also goes to parents with very young kids, because learning or education starts from the day that a child is born.
Yes.
So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of education that happens in the home. We look at education as only starting at 5 when they go to preschool or kindy, and then we look at grade 1. But actually, a lot of a child's education happens with the family, with people around them. They absorb a lot more than what they absorb at school. Of course, at school, they do learn a lot, and also academic aspects of it, but a child is molded from their home.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I agree, and I firmly believe that the groundwork should be done by the parents. And it also doesn't stop when children go to school. There's a role that parents play in the education and the upbringing that lasts an entire lifetime. All right, let's talk about independence and self-help skills. I'm thinking about basic self-care, using the bathroom, dressing, feeding themselves, all sorts of things that are important for a child's independence and also their confidence in the classroom environment. Please tell us more about that.
Okay, so when they come to school, they are expected to be able to use the restroom by themselves. That means to ask for it, because they need to be able to feel and realize that I need to go to the bathroom. Therefore, I should ask on time. use the bathroom by themselves, be able to dress themselves after using the bathroom properly, because at grade R or in grade 1, the teacher doesn't accompany a child to a bathroom unless there's an accident or they need help or they're not feeling well. Dressing themselves, that means they come to school dressed anyway. So putting their head on, if we do an activity that involves taking off shoes, to be able to put on their own shoes. Lacing up is still a problem, but it's a good skill to teach children if they manage to grasp it before school. But that's not written in concrete. They also need to look after their own belongings, because if a teacher has 25 children, of course, you oversee that everything is in its place, but the children need to know that it's their responsibility. If you take off your jumper, you go and put it in your bag. Independence also it touches on understanding the environment, understanding the orientation of the classroom. Where do I find certain things in my class? If I'm looking for a pencil, we keep our pencils in those drawers over there. If I need my face cloth, I go to my locker and get it. So that orientation and independence, the teacher will obviously scaffold them the first few weeks because they are new, they are in a new environment, and they don't understand much. But after 3-4 weeks, they should be in the routine and understanding and knowing what to expect next or what comes next. That's independence for me. There are certain tasks that I stopped doing. Obviously, I'm in the higher grade, which is grade 2. But after a certain amount of weeks, I stopped reminding them to pick their readers into their homework bags, because that should be something that they know. If I see a child in second term still not clued up with that, then I would think there is a problem. And things like opening lunch boxes, opening their water bottles. Yeah, and for parents, what parents can do on that one is allow children to help in the house, around the house. Give them tasks, give them things to do. Do not overdo things for them. I know they might not do it perfectly, like doing their beds in the morning. Obviously, they're not going to do it perfectly, but give them that opportunity to do it, because that's the only time they will learn.
Yes, and I'm also thinking about tidying up, putting things away once they've used them. Those basic skills are things that children should be able to master by the time they go to school.
Tabo. Excuse me.
That's fine.
Turn off the stove. All right, so yeah, they need to master that before going to school, because at school, the teacher will not be opening each individual's lunchbox. It's just impossible. At break time, if you put your lunchbox down to play with a friend, then surely you should remember to go and pick it up when the bell goes and pack it away into your bag. And know their belongings, besides them being labeled and all that. Knowing that this belongs to me. So if ever it gets lost, then we say, whose jumper is this? Recognize yours. That's independence for me.
Okay, yeah, because that might cause some embarrassment and discomfort at school if children lose their things or lose their way. That's also something that I was thinking of, is how to find their way around the school environment from one classroom to the next, or how to go to the bathroom or the principal's office, or the route to the playground and things like that. It's, shall I call it navigation?
Orientation. So they do that in the first week. Yes, they are shown around. So it depends with whether a child was at grade R at the same school that they are at, or are they coming in from a different school. So I'll take, for example, where I teach. We have a grade R there. So our kids, our grade R children already have an idea of what the big school looks like, because they come in for things like music, the library, and they peek around and see the classrooms.
Okay.
So the first week we do show them around, and if they get lost, there'll always be someone to show them where to go. But it rarely happens. That is very rare for a child to be disorientated for a long period. They seem to find their feet and understand their environment quite quickly. Another cause of stress for children in the first few weeks of school is the pickup time when they get picked up from school. If there is a delay, this is for parents. It's very important to stick to the time, because
Yes.
when you do not turn up at the gates and it's home time and all the other kids have left, it's very stressful for a grade 1 child to understand that, okay, mommy's just running late. So the first term, let me just say the whole of first term is very important, because that sets the tone for the rest of the schooling career. You need to allow your child to trust you with fetching times and understand that, okay, mommy's just late today, but do not make it a habit that they don't know, are they getting fetched early? Are they going to stay with the teacher? So it also helps them, it grounds them, and it makes them feel secure so they can focus on other things like academics, if they feel good enough about all the other parts of their settling in.
And also at this age, they don't really have a very well-developed sense of time. So being on time and not keeping them waiting is vitally important. It gives them a sense of safety and security also, especially because of all the adjustments to the new environment.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to problem solving and critical thinking skills, one of my favorite topics. I love, and I'm very passionate about critical thinking with emotional intelligence as one of my passions. So these skills are essential for analyzing information and making decisions and solving problems in various subjects. And a child who lacks critical thinking and problem-solving abilities may have difficulty doing assignments and coursework, and that will impact their overall academic performance. How does this start showing up when we're talking about children at the young age of preschool and being ready and prepared for primary school?
I think one of the things we need to be aware of, and not just in terms of how it's showing up, but how we as adults prevent us from identifying it. Very often, for example, when a child makes a mistake, like they might knock a glass of water over, our instinct as an adult is to immediately wipe it up or clean it up. And we are actually depriving them of that moment to problem solve and to critically think about a solution. And because we're doing that, we are not able to identify when children are not problem solving and not critical thinking. Or, for example, we tend to give them the answer rather than guiding them to the answer. So I think in terms of identification, it is so important to realize that we need to give them the opportunities to do problem solving and to critical think, because by allowing them those opportunities, you are then able to identify children that are struggling with these skills. And I think it's so important because very often it goes unidentified, because in the younger age group, adults naturally just want to fix everything. And then it usually crops up in grade 4. And then we're like, now we've skipped the whole of foundation phase.
Okay.
And sometimes it's only even noticed in high school. So it's so important that we give them those opportunities. So if a child does knock over a glass of water, the response is actually, so what do you think we should do now? And let them try. I mean, some of them are going to take a tissue and put the tissue in the water. It's not going to clean it up. But then you can say, oh, that doesn't seem to be soaking all the water up. What do you think we can do next? And this actually allows them to develop critical thinking from a basic skill, and it's problem solving. And eventually through time, they'll go fetch a towel or a cloth and they'll mop it up. But that would have developed from there. So we need to allow those opportunities. One of the things I do as a support learning specialist is when I am marking a child's work, I never underline or highlight the specific error. I do a dot. And then I'll say to them, we need to re-look at this area. And I allow them to go back and look at what they've done. So for example, if we've spelt the word cat and they've put a B instead of a T, I can say, let's look at this word. And I'll say, let's look at the sound. I will never, ever, and sometimes it takes a while for them to get there, tell them, no, it's supposed to be a T. Because that is how they're going to problem solve. That is how they're going to learn to critically think. And it's these basic foundations. Like a lot of people think, oh, it means they must be able to do it. No. You've got to start small. It's so important. Or for example, if they do a sum and they do 2 + 2 and they write 5, I actually give them beads to practice and correct themselves. So with problem solving and critical thinking, we have to understand that self-correction is a very important skill. The ability for them to go back and identify what needs to change. So always providing those opportunities is so important. And again, I'm going to bring this in because these guys, miracle workers, parents, miracle workers. When they're building puzzles, to say to them, what colors match? What shapes match? Why are you putting those 2 pieces of puzzles together? Oh, because it's the legs of the dinosaur. These are critical thinking skills. Puzzles stimulate critical thinking and problem solving. The trial and error, oh, this piece does not fit. Why is it not fitting? I honestly, if I could promote anything today, it would be please use puzzles. It's without a doubt the most important thing that anybody could invest in. You can also use puzzles because problem solving and critical thinking come from understanding questions. So your basic were her questions. Who, what, where, why, which, how, understanding. And I actually do with my kids, and it's so much fun. I allow them to ask me questions. And then I'll sometimes give the wrong answer on purpose. And it's so cute because I go, I don't think that's the right one. And then I'll say, oh, how do you know? And they'll go, wow, because I asked which one was red and you've told me the blue one. So they're immediately actually critically thinking and problem solving for themselves. So to actually reverse the roles is such a healthy way to develop those skills as well. And to give your child the opportunity to do that, because if they're understanding how questions work, they're able to critical think because they know how to ask a question. Instead of just getting the why, you actually want them to think a little bit. Like maybe instead of asking why, I should ask, how did you bake the cake? Maybe instead of asking why, I should be asking what, or which. So understanding how to question is so important in our own critical thinking as we grow older. And it starts with the basics. It starts with pictures. Which color is the car? Red or blue? So that ability to choose and decipher and evaluate and distinguish is critical. Sorry, I'm just turning here. And also the idea of using it in daily situations. I think we undervalue using daily situations. It's not all homework based. It's not all about doing homework. Getting the children involved when you're cooking in the evening and you have 4 family members. You know, please fetch the potatoes. How many potatoes do you think we need? You know, instead of saying, get me 4 potatoes, let them think. How many family members are there? There are 4. Maybe some of the older family members would like 2 potatoes instead of 1. So you can actually do this in your daily life, and it changes their ability to critically think and problem solve as they progress up the grades. But it's important to start with the foundations, and it's so important. I always say, provide the guidance, not the answers.
Great examples, suggestions that you've given, Melissa. Wonderful ideas for parents on what to do. I always see a mental picture of critical thinking and problem solving with this light bulb that's illustrated, but it's not actually a light bulb that goes on. It's a process, and then the light bulb goes on.
Exactly.
So Yeah, interesting ways to encourage critical thinking. The
I
process.
love that analogy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marwa. I love your analogy. That is, I'm actually going to use that. It's like the process and then the light bulb. That's a beautiful analogy.
Thank you. Routine, structure. Many people raise their children on a very strict routine, very structured situation with rules and regulations. And then there are children who grow up without much structure, without very clear routines. How do children adjust, or what are the basics that they need to know and understand to be able to come into the school environment and cope with lesson times and a bell that rings and break times and a bell that rings again and the different routines and structures that they find in the school environment?
Okay, so at the big school, we are very much structured. There is a routine. There's a time for everything. There's a specific time allocated for a specific subject or activity. So a child that's coming to grade 1 should be ready to accept transition. It can be rough in the beginning, but your child should be able to easily transition, regardless of how fun the activity is. They need to get used to the idea that our day changes through activities after 30 minutes or an hour. The challenge that we sometimes face is that when a child is not used to it, it becomes a problem when they get stuck in something that they like. I'll also add on to this where a child did their preschool or grade R, because I found that parents sometimes take other curriculums. I'll take maybe, for example, if you don't mind me mentioning Montessori, where a child has sort of lots of independence. So it's important for parents to plan there, to map out their child's education career, how it's going to be like, because that's important as well. What you teach them in the beginning should sort of be maintained throughout their school career. So if you put a child in Montessori, and this is not to say all children face those challenges, but I have seen it in my class, where a child is brought in from a Montessori background. I absolutely adore Montessori, but it doesn't fit in well with the KEPS curriculum in South Africa.
Okay.
So a child from Montessori is independent, wants to choose what they want to do at a certain time, chooses to spend the amount of time that they want depending on how engaged they still are. Whereas in the KEPS curriculum, you cannot do that. Also, what I found is children seem to think that other kids can carry on, okay, when I introduce a new activity, and then they'll say, oh yeah, they can do that, I can carry on here. They do not understand that we have to do this as a whole group. Because in Montessori or other syllabuses or other curriculums, it's okay for each individual to be engaged in different activities at different times at the same time. So that's also another challenge when it comes to routine. So what parents can do from the home front is have a specific routine, not too strict, not too regimented like in the military, but there should be specific bedtime. It can be relaxed over the holidays or on special occasions, but there should be specific times for specific things. If it's dinner time and we're sitting at the table to eat, let's all sit and eat. If it's sleeping time, okay, let's say our good night, hugs, kisses, off to bed. That helps when a child comes into the big school and they find out that after an hour, a teacher will say, okay, let's finish up. They will not struggle to transition, other than a child that's just allowed to carry on with whatever they're doing. I've also noted that they also need to work within allocated time and work independently. So I've said this before, that there is a specific time for everything, but also there's a limit, because a teacher is teaching according to the curriculum, there's a set benchmark of what they need to achieve at the end of every term that needs to be met. So sometimes you find that after a few weeks, a teacher will call you in as a parent and say, listen, your child is not finishing their work. What they're trying to say is they're not saying they're not able to do their work, but it's they're not working within the set time frame, and they need to speed it up. Because sometimes I find parents worrying and stressing that my child is not doing well, whereas it's actually the child is not keeping up. So there's a fine balance, and it is stressful for the grade ones to adjust to that amount of sitting at a table and having to complete the set amount of tasks. So there's a big adjustment from grade R to grade 1. So that's my take on adaptability.
Sorry. I'm so glad that you brought up the bedtime routine, because something that's very, very important is that children need to get enough sleep every night, especially when they're going through that transition and they are in school where they are maybe don't have the freedom to go and have a nap whenever they feel tired, or to slow down or take a break because of that routine and having to do everything together as a group that you mentioned.
Yes. And also on routine, I want to add the starting times for school. Maybe grade R or preschool may have been flexible that a parent would walk in an hour later because so-and-so wouldn't wake up or they were not in the mood for school. That's where a strict routine comes in. So you need to work out a time in your household that you know works for you, to be able to wake them up, get them ready, brush their teeth, or if they have breakfast, they need to have breakfast. That's very important. Have breakfast, and leave the house not in a rush, not running late, not screaming at them, not shouting at them that you are running late. That's very important. Easing them into the day also sets the tone for the day. I know that if a child walks into my class late, they are not going to be very happy until maybe about break time, because they do not want to walk on a full class that's already seated and the teacher that's in front already teaching. It embarrasses them and they do not like it. That walk from the gate all the way into the building, that's a confidence thing. They do not like it when everyone is all in and they're the only one that's coming in. I've seen children break down at the gates in refusing to come in because now the parent just wants to let them in. So if, for example, you are running late, walk them in, walk them to the classroom door, speak to the teacher and explain why they are late, because that's very important for them, that they let their teacher know it wasn't my fault that mom was running late. It was mom's fault. And talk about it. Kids understand more than we think. Talk about it and say, listen, this is now big school. You're expected to be there at so and so a time. So when I wake you up, you have enough time to do 1, 2, and 3 at a relaxed pace without rushing. And you can get to school and play with your friends and relax before you go into class.
Yes, that makes sense. Very important. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Because if you take, for example, myself as an adult, I do not like rushing or running late for a meeting, because then I get there, my thoughts are disorganized, I am sweating, and it takes time to settle down. So that's also what happens with children. And the teacher will already start the lessons, and now they have to backtrack. So it sort of disturbs everything, and your child feels bad about that having to be done. But as a teacher, I just want to mention also that teachers are very supportive. As a teacher myself, if a child is running late, and they walk through the front door, kids will be kids. There will be gasps like, "Oh, you're late." I make sure that they feel comfortable. I'll be like, "Hi, good to see you." Make them feel that they haven't done anything wrong. And then I'll walk with them to the hook, put their bag down, and then I'll say, okay, we had just started, so that they realize they haven't missed out much.
Yes, that's wonderful. Wonderful that you do that. What is very clear to me is the role that the parents play. And also something you mentioned earlier, that parents need to understand the type of educational environment they choose for their children and the differences in the different options so that they can support their children with the transitions. Just to come back to what you mentioned earlier, by, let's say, going to Montessori for preschool and then going into a mainstream school. So parents need to also have a good understanding and a grasp of the different educational models and what the impact of that and the changes are on their children. Very important.
Yes. And just to add, it's not all kids that struggle to settle in, but some might struggle a lot. And they may not understand why is it happening now. So it's also communication between a parent and a child is also important. And explaining to them why things are being done a certain way. I'll give you an example from, I won't mention names, of course, but I'll give you an example of what I've encountered in my teaching career. I had a child that came from Montessori, and lovely, lovely boy, very smart, but wouldn't understand why they have to do things at a certain time. Very artistic child, so preferred to draw most of his time. So wouldn't understand, why am I saying no, do not draw while I'm teaching, you need to sit and listen. So that became a huge challenge, because now the whole class was now looking at it and thinking, okay, so and so is allowed to carry on drawing, why can't we do it?
Yes.
Why are they allowed to draw on the whiteboard? So it sort of filters onto other children, because mainstream, what you do for child A should be fair and should be done for child B. There are no exceptions. And he noticed such things. So we eventually worked on it, and the child got to understand that it's a different environment now. But yeah, and it might sound as if the child is being cheeky when they question, why should I do that? But it's because of the background that they were given, the foundation that they were given, which is not wrong. But again, parents need to check the compatibility of where child is coming from and where they're putting them for grade 1.
Let's talk about health and wellness. A child's physical and mental health also plays a significant role in their readiness for school or their readiness for learning. Poor health can lead to frequent absenteeism, which also hinders their academic progress and just their overall well-being. Can you talk about that for us, please?
I think one of the things that's so important is when we talk health, it's always distinguished into categories. So we're either talking our physical health or our cognitive health, or we're talking about our mental health. And to understand that it's all actually interlinked. That it's so important that our health and our wellness is all interlinked. And understanding that your child needs to have all the areas looked at and all the areas fed for growth is so important. And to find that sort of harmony between all the areas is very, very important. One of the examples I use quite a bit is especially with our movement or kinesthetic learners. In order to feel emotionally regulated, they need to stimulate their vestibular system, which is our system that likes the movement or the swinging. So very often that child rocking back and forth in the chair is not misbehaving. They're actually using their vestibular system to regulate, because movement helps them find that harmony in their mental health. So that's one example of how they actually interlink. Or for example, if I have a learner that's sensory orientated, they will be stimulated by tactile things. They will feel more driven if I'm giving them something that allows them to touch and feel, which then stimulates the intellectual side, because we are addressing the emotional and the tactile side. So it's so important. And one of the things is nutrition. Nutrition is vital. And for example, children, we're starting to see more and more now that breakfasts that have more protein in them are actually better for children with executive functioning challenges and who potentially may have ADHD traits, because it feeds them the correct way. It stimulates the correct chemicals and hormones that need to be produced. And there are a lot of studies coming out in this. So nutrition is so important. It's so important to look at what is my child getting in the mornings? What are they eating throughout the day? And one of the things that I do with the kids that is so much fun, we get a good old-fashioned paper plate, and we call it our color plate. And what we do, especially for our fussy eaters who are not too keen to eat, we keep a plate throughout the day, and we have to try and get all the different colors on our plate. So, for example, if I have some broccoli, I can put a little bit of green in. If I had a bit of spinach or beetroot, now my beetroot, I've got a bit of red. And it engages them in the idea of eating healthy, but in a fun way that allows them to understand that in order for my body to get the nutrients I need a colorful plate of food. And it's also super fun because they're coloring up the plate. For kiddies that aren't so keen to color in, sometimes we literally just get color paper and we tear it up and we stick it down. Again, we're using fine motor, same as the coloring. So it's great for another skill. But having that nutrition and understanding that our nutrition feeds our brain. And I like to teach children that. I like to teach them that what I'm putting in my body feeds my brain. It feeds my body. And I am a huge promoter of water, definitely, so much water. If you pack in a fruit juice for school, please also pack in a bottle of water and encourage the child to drink both. I know we're tending to want to sort of like placate the child and be like, just have your juice. But remember that juice are very high in sugars, natural sugars, but it's still sugars if you're using fruit juice. So if you are doing that, to always have the other as well. And I like to say to them, if I've had 2 sips of juice, let's have 2 sips of water. So we're trying to create that harmony in the process. And obviously that links back to our emotional side, which is things that we've spoken about. How do we help them? The breathing, having the bubbles. So that in that wellness, if you have a child that is harmoniously well, they just function better in the school environment because they're more engaged, they're more aware, they're more able to think. And we've got to be aware of that. We've got to be aware of, do we have the harmony that we need from all aspects to create a child that can engage in the school environment? Because it's very difficult to engage if I'm not getting my movement, especially for children. A lot of them learn through movement. And I think this is so important. One of my favorite things is therapy. Absolutely love therapy. Huge fan of it, because it also has that sensory input and it has the movement. So it's a huge benefit, but we're doing that. The movement of getting our bodies moving, being able to stretch and bring oxygen in, being able to play at break. One of the questions I ask my daughter every day is, what games did you play at break? Because I want to ensure that she's had that physical movement and hasn't sat at break and done nothing. Because we're going back into the classroom and we haven't stimulated our circulation. We haven't stimulated our oxygen. We haven't given our body like a nice wake-up call. And what did you eat? We actually have a little thing. She at the age of 10, still has a little color list of the different colors that we've eaten because she is a bit of a fussy eater. So I need to make sure that she's getting the right nutrition. Thankfully, she's a huge water drinker, so we don't send juice to school. It's only water. But looking at movement, and we talk about the emotions, and we talk about the experiences we've had. And one of the things I really would like to introduce today with wellness, we have a concept in our household. It's called decompression time. It's the time where we can center ourselves, and we use this time all the time. So if we feel that things are getting very tense or an argument might happen, rather than discussing, we will say, I need decompression time. And decompression time is when you take yourself out of the situation and you can go to your bedroom and you can read, listen to music, do some breathing. It's a no technology time, but allow yourself to center. And I myself, as the mom, use that. If I've had a very hectic day and I know she wants to talk to me about a lot of things and I'm not going to be able to engage fully, I'll say, Mom just needs 10 minutes of decompression time, and then we can engage. So I think when you're looking at wellness, you've got to realize that we've got to replicate those behaviors for our kids as well. And she uses it. The other day, she came home from school and she's busy writing her grade 4 exams. And she said, I just need to decompress today before we do anything. So I knew. And so she went off into her bedroom and she lay down on the bed for about 15 minutes. And then she came out and she was just a different child because she had had that opportunity. Whereas if I had forced that engagement, it may not have ended so well. So I think the idea that I'm really wanting to stress for families is that allowing people the space to emotionally and mentally just re-engage. And we call it decompression time. You're welcome to call it whatever you would like, but to have that code so that it helps those children, and also in the classroom to realize when they're feeling overwhelmed and to realize, oh my goodness, I need to have a bit of decompression time. And then they can maybe just nip out to the bathroom or say to the teacher, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Can I go fetch something from the office? But it's that ability to understand when my body is telling me I just need to step out a little bit. And for us as parents to be aware that our children also need this, and for our children to learn these behaviors through us.
Yes, I was thinking as I was listening to you also how important it is that we as parents model this behavior, especially when it comes to health and wellness. And when we model it, it's easy for them to pick it up. And it's so incredible when you see them actually implementing it themselves. Like you mentioned, when your daughter said, I need some time to decompress. It's amazing when you see them implementing it themselves, and out of their own, they come and they apply these tools and skills that we've been teaching them. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I wanted to just share 2 things, if you don't mind. So
Please.
The first one, thank you. The first one is I co-authored in a book. It was written a while back, but it's incredibly helpful. It's called Am I Ready for School? And it actually it is the most amazing book. I'm just going to open up to a page because it has a parent explanation side, and then it has an activity. Sorry, let's try and open it a bit better. There we go.
There we go.
That the child can do. So if you're wanting to get a little bit more information about whether your child is ready for school, and I wrote it with some other amazing authors, this is such a nice starting point for you as a parent because it's got the information, it helps you understand the different concepts, and it actually has activities for the kids to do, which is also hugely beneficial. I have written a book, and it's Handwriting Made Easy, the EduHelp Way. It's very different. It's structured differently. It works on directions. It also, for the interest of parents, it has a beautiful parent guide that tells parents everything that they need to be aware about when learning to handwrite. But it talks about movements, when to look out for, what to look out for, and it's also got just so many different things. And there's a thing that's very different called delayed repetition. So most of our handwriting books tend to only do a letter once or a number once. This book actually does it 3 times, so the child has the reinforcement. It's also beneficial because it's used color lines. So for children that have visual spacing issues, children that have difficulty working on a page, this actually helps them because the books are usually just blue, and this one has different color lines. So the children learn where to place their writing. And it also has step by step. We're not just talking the dot and arrows. Step by step, how to use the correct letter formation. And it talks about crossing the midline and the benefit of patterns. It's actually 5 books in one. So it's really, really the last thing I want to show, because I just love it so much. And I did this with the most amazing, I have to give her credit. Her name's Taryn, and she works at Web Partner. And she created these most, they are just stunning, absolutely stunning. We've got little letter charts and alphabet charts in here for the parents as well.
Yes.
So please, guys, fine motor, midline crossing, book awareness, some great activities to do with the kids. It's got so much in it that will help you prepare for that grade 1 and to be successful in your grade 1.
We'll put some links in the comments below where you can get all these resources. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and your experience. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. This is quite nice to be able to impart my knowledge that I have to the parents that have kids going into grade 1 next year, and I wish them luck.
Yeah. And thank you once again so much for bringing your knowledge and your wisdom and all your valuable experience to this video. I'm sure it's going to be very helpful to many people.
I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. You really explained very well with some great examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you for having me. This has been such a lovely session. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to be able to share all of these.
Yeah, wonderful. Lots of great resources there. Thanks very much for that.